I wasn't planning to leave the apartment that morning. My laptop was open on the kitchen table, emails waiting, projects half finished, the kind of routine I usually let swallow me whole. Yet something restless pressed against my chest, a strange unease I couldn't name. I poured another cup of coffee, scrolled through my bank app, and saw nothing unusual. Still, the itch remained. It was ridiculous. I'd managed my accounts online for years. The Oak Street branch was barely a mile away, but I almost never stepped inside anymore. Still, as I stood by the window watching the late morning sun angle over the neighboring roofs, a thought came clear as a command. Go to the bank. I tried to reason with myself. Why bother? The bills were on autopay. My rent cleared, my freelance checks deposited directly. Nothing demanded my presence, yet the thought refused to let me go. By the third time, I'd circled the apartment pretending to tidy up. I sighed and grabbed my bag. The drive was short. The streets hummed with weekday quiet. A handful of cars at each light, a mother pushing a stroller, a man in a suit checking his watch. I turned into the branch parking lot, expecting the usual mid-morning bustle. Instead, it looked strangely bare, 2 cars at most. I cut the engine, sat for a moment, and told myself I was wasting time, but I still opened the door. Inside my bag, my fingers brushed the smooth edge of my debit card, the same one I'd used since college. I thought about the years I'd built a fragile independence, taking contract jobs, saving for my own place, pushing back whenever my parents insisted they knew better. Every step felt hard-won, and still they managed to press shadows over my choices. I locked the apartment door in my mind as much as I had that morning in reality, wanting to believe I could shut out their influence whenever I wished. Yet now, as I stepped out of the car and smoothed the wrinkles in my blouse, I couldn't ignore the quiet certainty tightening in my stomach. I walked toward the glass entrance of the bank, unaware that the moment I crossed that threshold, the foundation of my life would begin to shift. The air inside the branch was cool and quiet, the kind of hush that usually reminded me of waiting rooms. I expected to see 1 or 2 people at the counter, maybe a clerk arranging papers. Instead, my eyes caught on 2 familiar figures standing near the manager's desk. My parents, they were dressed neatly as if they'd planned this morning carefully. My father in his pressed navy blazer, my mother in a pale silk blouse she reserved for important occasions. They stood close together, their posture calm, their voices low but deliberate. I slowed my pace, instinct telling me not to interrupt. The words drifted over before I could stop them. Our daughter doesn't recognize us anymore. My father said smoothly, his tone carrying the weight of a man who believed himself reasonable. She forgets names, places. We've consulted doctors. It's progressing, my mother added softly. We're only here to protect her. She's not capable of handling her finances alone. My stomach clenched, my breath stalled. They were talking about me as if I weren't alive, as if I weren't whole. The manager nodded along, flipping through a folder my father had handed him. From where I stood, hidden half behind a tall divider, I could see the edge of my own name printed on one of the pages. Emma Harper. My life reduced to a file spoken about in the past tense by the 2 people who raised me. They looked so composed, so certain, like benevolent guardians doing the hard but necessary thing. Anyone else would have believed them. Perhaps I would have too if I hadn't been standing right there, pulse racing, ears burning with each false word. I pressed my palm against the divider, grounding myself, because if I didn't, I might have believed their story myself. I stepped forward, each footfall echoing across the polished floor, carrying me out of the shadows and directly into the lie they had crafted. My footsteps carried farther than I expected, the sharp taps breaking the spell of their polished performance. My father's voice faltered mid-sentence, and my mother's hand froze on the edge of the desk. Both turned at once, their faces shifting from composure to something tighter, almost brittle. "Good morning," I said evenly, though my throat burned. The manager blinked at me, glancing between us as if he had walked into a play halfway through and suddenly realized the actors were improvising. My father recovered first, forcing a small smile. "Emma, sweetheart, you weren't supposed to." I cut him off. "I wasn't supposed to what? Hear you declare me incapable of managing my own life." My mother stepped forward, voice low and sweet as though soothing a child. "Darling, you've been under stress. Sometimes you forget things." We just wanted to make sure. I forget nothing. I snapped louder than I intended. The bank lobby felt too quiet, my words bouncing against the walls. I turned to the manager, meeting his startled eyes. My name is Emma Harper. I am not under medical care. I have not authorized guardianship, and I certainly recognize my own parents. His mouth opened, then closed slowly. He lifted the folder from the desk, holding it out toward me like a fragile offering. My fingers shook as I took it, but I didn't break eye contact with the people who raised me. My father's jaw clenched. You don't understand. This is for your own protection. I let out a laugh, sharp and humorless. Protection or convenience? Silence swelled between us so thick I could almost taste it. The manager excused himself, quietly retreating to another office, leaving the three of us standing in a triangle of truth none of us wanted. I held the folder to my chest, feeling the weight of it press into me like a verdict. Then, without another word, I turned toward the exit, each step heavier than the last, carrying the proof of their betrayal out into the daylight. I set the folder down on my kitchen table, the laminate surface suddenly feeling too small to contain it. For a long time, I just stared. My hands pressed flat against the wood, as though bracing myself against a storm. Finally, I forced the cover open. Inside were neatly clipped documents, medical notes, statements, forms I had never signed. The first page claimed I suffered from progressive cognitive decline. Another bore signatures not mine, authorizing guardianship to my parents. Each sheet carried the stamp of finality, as if my identity had already been stripped from me and cataloged for storage. My throat tightened as I read line after line, my name threaded through their lies. I remembered my father saying last winter, "You're always forgetting where you left things," after I misplaced my keys. I had laughed it off then, not realizing he was planting a seed. My mother sobbed when I told her I was juggling too many projects. "You can't handle stress, Emma. You never could." At the time, it felt like pity. Now it sounded like rehearsal. I flipped another page and saw the date of a supposed evaluation. That same week, I'd gone for a routine checkup, leaving the office with a clean bill of health. No decline, no warning. But here, in black and white, was a version of me I didn't recognize. Frail, confused, incapable of version they had invented. I pushed back from the table, the chair scraping against the floor. The folder sat there like an open wound, bleeding trust onto everything it touched. All the late-night calls from my mother, asking if I'd eaten my father, insisting I should let them manage my rent to make life easier. Every gesture reassembled itself now into a pattern I couldn't ignore. I pressed my palms over my eyes, willing the weight in my chest to lessen, but it didn't. It only hardened. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, pulling me back to the room and toward the confrontation I knew was coming. The bell echoed through the apartment again, sharper this time, like they were trying to hurry me into answering. I opened the door, and there they were standing side by side on my doormat, faces arranged in polite concern. My mother's eyes darted past me into the apartment, as though searching for the folder she already knew was inside. I stepped aside without a word. They walked in their movements, practiced, too comfortable in a space that was mine alone. I followed them to the kitchen, where the folder still sat on the table unopened since I pushed it away. I pulled out a chair, sat down, and with deliberate care placed the folder in the center between us. My father cleared his throat. "Emma, we didn't want you to find out like this. It's a precaution, nothing more." "Precaution?" My voice came out low. "Even these are forged documents. These signatures aren't mine, and these medical notes are fabrications." My mother reached for the folder, but I pressed my hand on top of it. She withdrew quickly, folding her hands in her lap. "Sweetheart, sometimes you don't see how vulnerable you are. We were only thinking of your future." I leaned forward. "My future doesn't belong to you. You don't get to erase me while I'm still alive." Silence stretched across the table. My father tapped his finger against the wood once, twice, but offered no rebuttal. My mother kept her eyes fixed on the floor. Their stillness was heavier than any argument. I opened the folder and pulled out one sheet at random, sliding it toward them. "This says I'm unfit to make decisions. Tell me, when exactly did I become incapable? Was it when I moved out on my own, when I refused to let you manage my accounts, or was it when I started saying no?" Neither of them spoke. Their silence was the confession I'd been waiting for louder than any explanation they might have offered. I closed the folder again, my hand firm against its cover. The knock of my heartbeat was loud in my ears as I stood pushing back my chair. They had nothing left to say, but I knew the fight was only beginning. I didn't sit back down. The weight of the folder still pressed against my palm as I looked at them. Two people who had taught me my first words held me when I cried and now sat silent in the face of their own betrayal. Why? The question came out flat, stripped of emotion. Why would you do this to me? My mother opened her mouth, but my father spoke first, his patience cracking. Because, Emma, it's obvious you can't handle it. The trust fund, the deed your accounts, they're better in our hands than wasted on your experiments. I froze. He hadn't meant to reveal so much. My mother's sharp glance toward him confirmed it. So that's what this is. My voice hardened. Not about protection, not about keeping me safe. You wanted control. You wanted the money. My father leaned forward, his tone sharpening. We wanted to make sure it wasn't squandered. You jump from job to job, living like stability is optional. You don't think about what happens in 10, 20 years. Someone has to. The words cut deep, not because they were true, but because they were laced with the contempt he had hidden behind fatherly advice for years. My mother reached across the table, her voice trembling. We didn't want it to come to this. But you've been distant, secretive. We couldn't take the risk of watching everything your grandfather left vanish. I pulled my hand back before hers could touch it. You mean your inheritance? You weren't protecting me. You were protecting your claim. The room stilled. My father's jaw worked as if he wanted to argue, but the mask had slipped and what remained was raw ambition dressed as concern. I stood straighter, the folder clutched at my side like armor. If that's the truth, then at least we finally understand each other. Neither of them moved as I walked toward the door. My father's muttered curse followed me into the hallway, but I didn't turn back. I knew now exactly what I was fighting against, and it was no longer confusion or doubt. It was greed. The next morning, I woke with the folder still on the table, its shadow stretching across the room like an accusation. My head ached from replaying the confrontation, but beneath the exhaustion ran something steadier resolve. By 9, I was on the phone with a lawyer I hadn't spoken to since college. His voice was measured professional, but I caught the pause when I explained what my parents had attempted. Bring everything he said, every document, every note. We'll untangle this. After hanging up, I dialed my financial advisor. The conversation was brisk, clinical. I revoked every authorization that linked back to my parents' canceled transfers I hadn't noticed before and reset every password. Each confirmation email that pinged my inbox felt like a lock clicking shut. At noon, I sat across from my lawyer's desk. The folder opened between us. He scanned the pages quickly, shaking his head. These signatures are fraudulent. The medical reports are questionable at best. This won't stand in court. His certainty gave me air I hadn't realized I was missing. Then came the harder part. Do you want to update your will? He asked. I hesitated only a moment before nodding. Yes, full revision. And I want everything redirected. To whom? My cousin Lily. She's 12 too young to be part of this, too honest to understand betrayal yet. He wrote it down without comment. I imagined Lily's gap-toothed smile the way she still hugged me fiercely when I visited and felt something steady inside me. If my parents wanted to treat me as a burden, then I would ensure their grasp never reached her. By the time I left his office, the sun was dropping low, and my accounts, my will, and my future were no longer theirs to touch. What remained was the confrontation I knew was still waiting at home. When I walked into my apartment that evening, I found them waiting. My father stood near the window, arms crossed, while my mother sat stiffly at the table. The air was heavy, the kind that warned of a storm long before the clouds appeared. You've made a mess, my father said. His tone carried no hesitation this time, only irritation. Freezing transfers, calling lawyers. Do you think this will end well for you? I set my bag down and met his stare. It ends better than the future you tried to write for me. His jaw tightened. We were protecting you. No, I said, pulling out a fresh set of documents my lawyer had handed me that afternoon. You were protecting your claim, and I know about the attempt to transfer my condo deed. You filed it last month. For the first time, my father faltered. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, but she didn't deny it. You forged signatures, falsified evaluations, and now you tried to steal my home. I laid the papers on the table with deliberate care. As of today, every guardianship claim is revoked, every authorization nullified. You will never touch another part of my life again. My father took a step toward me, voice low. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, I answered. I'm ending this. The silence that followed was colder than any argument. My mother finally whispered, Emma, we only wanted. I cut her off. You wanted control. And now it's gone. They didn't move as I gathered the papers and slid them back into my bag. Their stillness was almost eerie, like they were trying to imagine a version of me that would fold again, but that version no longer existed. I walked to the door, the sound of my keys sharp in the quiet, and knew the next time I faced them, it would not be on their terms. I had barely closed the door when the knock came hard and insistent. I opened it to find my parents on the threshold, their polished calm stripped away. You're ungrateful, my father spat. Everything we've done for you, your schooling, the roof over your head, and this is how you repay us. My mother's voice wavered, though her words were sharp. You've always been reckless, Emma. We stepped in because you can't manage alone. You'll thank us one day. I steadied myself against the frame. No, you didn't step in. You stepped over boundaries, over trust, over me. Don't twist this into care. My father's face reddened. You think independence makes you strong? It makes you blind. We were protecting you from yourself. Their words might once have cut, but now they rang hollow echoes of a script they'd rehearsed too often. I saw it clearly. Their version of protection was just control dressed in softer clothing. I'm not your project, I said quietly, and I'm not your possession. Whatever story you've told yourselves, it ends here. For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. My mother's shoulders sagged as though she might cry, but no tears came. My father's jaw clenched, locked against admitting defeat. Without another word, I stepped back inside and closed the door. The sound of it latching was sharper than their voices final in a way no argument could be. I leaned against the wood heart pounding, but for the first time in days, my pulse felt like it belonged only to me. The apartment was silent again, waiting, and I knew the next step was mine alone to take. The quiet settled around me like a blanket, heavy at first, then warm. I walked through the apartment slowly, touching the back of a chair, the edge of the counter, the cool frame of the window. Everything here was mine, not because I had bought it, but because I had defended it. The silence that once felt empty now carried a different weight. It wasn't loneliness. It was proof. I brewed tea and let it steep while I found my journal tucked on the shelf. Its pages held fragments of me, lists, half-finished thoughts, the kind of words I'd never said aloud. I sat at the table where the folder had been and opened to a fresh page. My pen hovered before moving steadily. Let no one define your mind who wouldn't trust your heart. The words came easily, more certain than anything I'd written in years. I underlined them once, then closed the book. For a long moment, I sat with the sound of the kettle clicking as it cooled the faint hum of the city beyond the glass. My parents were gone, but their absence didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like space. I had reclaimed space where I could finally breathe without their shadows crowding me. I sipped the tea, its heat grounding me, and leaned back in my chair. I had lost something irrevocable, yes, but what remained was mine alone. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for approval or permission. I wasn't defending my choices. I was simply living them. The night deepened outside and I let it. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges, but tonight belonged to me and me alone. Emma Harper learns a profound lesson about trust autonomy and the cost of reclaiming her identity. Confronted with her parents' betrayal, forging documents to declare her mentally unfit, and seize control of her finances, she discovers that love and care can mask greed and manipulation. Their actions cloaked in concern reveal a deeper desire to control her life and inheritance, forcing Emma to confront the painful reality that those closest to her can undermine her agency. Through this ordeal, she realizes the importance of vigilance over her own affairs and the courage required to assert her independence. By revoking their access, consulting a lawyer, and redirecting her will to her young cousin Lily, Emma reclaims her narrative, ensuring her legacy remains untouched by their ambition. The experience teaches her that true strength lies not in blind trust or familial loyalty, but in defining her own worth and protecting it fiercely. The silence of her apartment, once heavy, becomes a testament to her resilience, a space where she can live authentically free from others' definitions. Emma's journey underscores that autonomy is hard-won, requiring clarity, resolve, and the willingness to sever ties that threaten one's truth.
The text from my sister Jennifer came at 6:47 a.m. Christmas morning. Maya, what time should we arrive? Mom wants to know if you need help with anything. I stared at my phone from my first-class seat on Flight 842 to Honolulu, watching the California coastline disappear below. Help with anything, that was rich. In 15 years they'd never once offered actual help. It started when I was 22, fresh out of college and living in my first apartment. Mom had called 3 weeks before Christmas 2008, her voice strained with that familiar guilt trip tone I'd learned to recognize. Maya, honey, I just don't have the energy to do Christmas dinner this year. Your father's back surgery, you know, and Jennifer's so busy with her new job. Could you maybe host something small? Just immediate family. Small, turned into 17 people. Just immediate family, included cousins I barely knew and their children. That first Christmas I spent my entire savings on groceries, cooked for 3 days straight, and cleaned my apartment until my hands were raw. Jennifer arrived 2 hours late with store-bought cookies, took selfies with the centerpieces I'd made, and posted them with captions about our family traditions. But the real kicker came during dinner. Uncle Robert raised his glass and toasted Jennifer's amazing hosting skills. When I gently corrected him, Mom shushed me. Don't be petty, Maya. It's Christmas. I should have stopped there. Should have recognized the pattern forming. Instead, I smiled, cleaned up alone while everyone watched football, and somehow found myself agreeing to host New Year's too. 15 years. That's how long it took me to realize I'd become the family's unpaid event coordinator, caterer, decorator, and cleanup crew all rolled into one. Every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary, every graduation party, if it involved more than 3 people, it was automatically assigned to me. Not asked. The system was insidious in its efficiency. Mom would call first, usually around 3 weeks before any event. The conversation always followed the same script. Maya, we need to talk about, insert holiday/celebration here. What about it, Mom? Well, you know your sister's house is too small and your brother's place is under construction, and Dad and I just don't have the energy anymore. The implication hung there, unspoken but crystal clear. I was the only option. The family savior. The one who didn't have anything better to do anyway. The worst part wasn't even the money, though I calculated once that I'd spent over $40,000 of my own salary on family events over the years. It wasn't the time, though. I'd used every vacation day from my marketing job to shop, prepare, cook, and host. It wasn't even the physical exhaustion, though I'd developed chronic back pain from lifting tables and carrying platters. The worst part was how they'd rewritten history to erase me from it. Jennifer's Instagram was a masterpiece of revisionist documentation. Every family gathering appeared on her feed as our beautiful family traditions, with carefully cropped photos that made it look like she'd orchestrated everything. She'd post pictures of the dining room table I'd spent hours setting, the flower arrangements I'd made by hand, the elaborate dessert spreads I'd baked from scratch. The captions always referenced we and our family, and so grateful for these moments we create together. The comments poured in, you're so talented. What a perfect hostess. Your family is so lucky to have you. Jennifer would heart every single one. Meanwhile, I was in the kitchen washing dishes and wrapping leftovers, invisible as always. My brother Marcus wasn't much better. He'd arrive exactly when dinner was served, eat until he couldn't move, and then disappear to watch sports while I cleaned. His wife Sarah would make a show of offering to help, but somehow always got distracted by one of their kids needing attention. Maya's got this, she'd say with a laugh. She's so organized. Organized. That became my label. Maya's so organized, so capable, so good at this stuff. Never mind that I taught myself event planning through YouTube videos and Pinterest boards. Never mind that I stayed up until 2 a.m. for weeks before every event, stressed to the point of insomnia. Never mind that I'd never had anyone plan so much as a birthday dinner for me. The breaking point should have been Mom's 65th birthday party last spring. She'd requested something simple for maybe 20 people. It turned into a themed celebration for 47 guests, with a custom cake, professional decorations, and a slideshow presentation I'd spent 2 weeks creating. I rented tables, hired a photographer, even arranged for a surprise appearance by her college roommate I'd tracked down through Facebook. The party was perfect. Mom cried happy tears. The photos were magazine-worthy. The entire family told me it was the best party ever. 3 days later, Mom called with criticism. The flowers were a little overdone. The music was too loud. The photographer I'd hired was kind of pushy. She ended the call with, "Next time maybe we should just keep it simple." Next time. There was always going to be a next time. That's when I started seeing Dr. Martinez. I'd been putting off therapy for years, telling myself I was fine, just stressed, just busy. But something about Mom's critique of the party I'd nearly killed myself planning broke something inside me. I called the employee assistance program at work and scheduled an appointment. Dr. Martinez was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s who specialized in family dynamics. During our first session, I spent 30 minutes explaining that I wasn't sure why I was there, that my family relationships were mostly good, that I just felt overwhelmed sometimes. She listened without judgment, taking notes in a leather-bound notebook. When I finished my rambling explanation, she asked one simple question. "When was the last time someone in your family did something special for you?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't. Not couldn't remember, couldn't think of a single example. My last birthday had been acknowledged with text messages. My promotion at work had earned a "that's nice" from Mom and radio silence from my siblings. When I'd had the flu last winter and missed Christmas shopping, Jennifer had called to ask if I could at least order gifts online for the kids since she didn't know what they wanted. "I see," Dr. Martinez said gently. "Let's talk about that." Over the next 6 months, our sessions became a slow, painful excavation of 15 years of family dynamics I'd convinced myself were normal. Dr. Martinez helped me identify the patterns. The way my family weaponized guilt, how they'd cast me in the role of family servant and then gaslit me into believing it was natural, how they exploited my people-pleasing tendencies while giving nothing in return. The term she used was parentification, how I'd been assigned the emotional and logistical responsibilities of caring for the entire extended family, without any of the authority or appreciation that should come with that role. "It's not uncommon," she explained during one session. "Families often designate one person as the responsible one, and then systematically exploit that person's willingness to sacrifice for the group. The problem is, it becomes so normalized that both the family and the designated person lose sight of how unhealthy the dynamic really is." "But they need me," I protested. "If I don't plan these things, who will?" Dr. Martinez leaned forward slightly. "Maya, has anyone ever asked you what you need?" The question hit like a physical blow. I sat in her office, surrounded by soft lighting and tissues and the faint smell of lavender, and realized that no one in my family had ever once asked me what I needed. What I wanted. What would make me happy. I started planning my escape in September. It wasn't dramatic or emotional. It was methodical, like everything else I'd learned to do well. I opened a savings account at a different bank. I researched flights to Hawaii and found a perfect Christmas week package at a resort in Maui. I submitted my vacation request at work for December 20th through January 3rd. The hardest part was maintaining normal behavior during the October and November family events. I planned Marcus's wife's baby shower in October, pink and gold theme, 30 guests, custom favors she posted all over social media. I organized the family's Thanksgiving gathering in November, 21 people, traditional menu plus accommodations for 3 different dietary restrictions, handmade centerpieces featuring miniature pumpkins I'd carved myself. Both events went perfectly. Both times I smiled and accepted compliments and began mentally packing my suitcase for Hawaii. The December family meeting happened right on schedule. Mom called on December 3rd. "Maya, honey, we need to talk about Christmas." I let her go through the whole familiar script. Jennifer's house was too small. Marcus's place was still dealing with that kitchen renovation. Dad's arthritis was acting up. They were all just so tired from the busy year. "So we were thinking," Mom continued, "maybe you could host Christmas Eve and Christmas Day this year? Jennifer wants to do something special with the kids Christmas morning, so maybe brunch? And then the whole family could come for dinner. 2 days. She wanted me to host Christmas for 2 consecutive days. Of course, Mom, I said. I'll take care of everything. I could hear the relief in her voice. Oh Maya, you're a lifesaver. What would we do without you? I was about to find out. The group text went out on December 15th. Christmas schedule. Christmas Eve brunch at Maya's 11 a.m. Christmas Day dinner at Maya's 4 p.m. Can't wait to see everyone. XOXO. I got back 17 responses, all variations of sounds great, and thanks Maya, and see you there. No one asked what I needed them to bring. No one offered to help with shopping or cooking or setup. No one even asked if the timing worked for me. That night I bought my plane ticket. The morning of December 23rd, I drove to 3 different grocery stores and filled 2 shopping carts with food I'd never eat. I wanted their disappointment to be complete and obvious. Organic turkey from Whole Foods. Imported cheese. Expensive wine. Premium ingredients for dishes I'd perfected over 15 years of practice. I left everything in my refrigerator and pantry. My flight to Maui departed at 5:30 a.m. on December 24th. I'd set my alarm for 3 a.m. but I'd barely slept anyway. Instead, I'd lain in bed, alternating between excitement and terror. Part of me kept reaching for my phone to cancel the whole thing, to text my family with some emergency excuse, to fall back into the familiar pattern of sacrifice and resentment. But Dr. Martinez's voice kept echoing in my head from our last session. Maya, you've spent 15 years managing their feelings and expectations. What would happen if just once they had to manage yours? I turned off my phone at 4 a.m. and kept it off until I landed in Hawaii. The Maui resort was everything I'd dreamed of and nothing I'd experienced during 15 years of family holidays. My ocean view room had a private balcony where I ate breakfast alone, watching sea turtles surface in the turquoise water. I spent Christmas Eve getting a massage and reading a novel by the pool. No shopping lists, no cooking schedules, no family politics to navigate. Christmas Day itself was surreal in its simplicity. I ordered room service, fresh fruit, macadamia nut pancakes, Hawaiian coffee, and ate breakfast in bed while watching the sunrise. I went snorkeling. I took a nap. I had dinner at the resort restaurant, where the waiter asked about my holiday plans and I said simply, "This is it." "Traveling solo for Christmas?" he asked. "That's brave." Brave. No one in my family had ever called me brave for anything. I turned my phone back on that evening Hawaii time. It was already December 26th back home. I had 47 missed calls, 63 text messages and 12 voicemails. I made myself a tropical drink from the minibar and settled in to read through the chaos I'd created. The early messages, time-stamped around 11 a.m. Pacific on Christmas Eve, started with confusion. "Mom, Paya, where are you? We're at your apartment. Jennifer, your landlord let us in the building but you're not answering your door. Marcus, did you go to get last-minute stuff? We're all here." The tone shifted around noon. "Dad, Paya, this isn't funny. People are hungry. Jennifer, there's no food here. What's going on? Uncle Robert, kids are crying. Need to find a restaurant open." By evening, confusion had turned to panic. "Mom, Paya, Elizabeth, you call me right now. The whole family is here and there's nothing prepared." "Nothing. Jennifer, I can't believe you would do this to us. To the kids." "Marcus, Mom is having a panic attack. Where the hell are you?" Jennifer again, "Grandma drove 3 hours for this. She's 89 years old." The Christmas Day messages were even more desperate. "Mom, Maya, I don't know what's wrong but we can fix this. Just call me." Jennifer, "The entire family is talking about this. You've embarrassed all of us." Marcus, "Sarah's parents were supposed to come to dinner. What am I supposed to tell them?" And finally, around 8 p.m. Pacific on Christmas Day. "Mom, your behavior is selfish and cruel. I don't know who you've become but this isn't the Maya I raised. You've ruined Christmas for everyone." I read every message twice, waiting for the guilt to hit. Waiting for the crushing anxiety that had driven me to therapy in the first place. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 15 years. Peace. They'd figured it out. Without me, they'd scrambled and managed and found restaurants and made alternative plans. The children had still gotten their Christmas. The family had still gathered. The world had not ended because I wasn't there to orchestrate their happiness. I spent the next 3 days in Hawaii doing exactly what I wanted. I took a helicopter tour of the island. I learned to surf. I read 3 entire books without interruption. I bought myself souvenirs, the first vacation gifts I'd purchased for myself in years. On December 27th, I called Dr. Martinez's emergency line. She called me back within an hour. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Free," I said. "Terrified but free." She was quiet for a moment. "That sounds exactly right." I flew back to Los Angeles on December 29th, tanned and rested and dreading the confrontation I knew was waiting. But when I walked into my apartment, I found something unexpected. 3 voicemails from family members who hadn't spoken to me in years. My cousin David, who'd been at every Christmas I'd hosted but never once helped. "Maya, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I never realized how much work you did for all of us. Mom told me what happened and honestly I don't blame you." My Aunt Susan, Mom's sister. "Honey, I heard about Christmas. Your mom is upset, but between you and me she had it coming. She's been taking advantage of you for years. Good for you for finally standing up for yourself." My grandmother, Dad's mother. "Maya, dear, I want you to know that Christmas was lovely even though it was different. Your cousin Jennifer managed just fine. She should have been helping you all along. I hope you had a wonderful vacation." The family fallout was swift and predictable. Jennifer started a group chat without me to discuss Maya's behavior. Marcus called me selfish and dramatic. Mom alternated between guilt trips and silent treatment. But something had shifted in the family dynamic. Without me to automatically assign responsibilities to, they had to actually negotiate among themselves. Jennifer discovered that event planning was harder than it looked. Marcus learned that someone had to coordinate schedules and manage RSVPs. Mom realized that hosting duties couldn't just be dumped on whoever seemed most willing. More importantly, I learned that I could survive their disapproval. My siblings eventually started speaking to me again, mostly because they needed my help with something. But the dynamic had changed. When Jennifer called about planning Mom's birthday party, I said, "I'm not available that weekend, but I'm happy to contribute $50 toward hiring a caterer." $50? She sputtered. "Maya, you know I can't plan a whole party by myself." "Actually, I know you can," I said. "You managed Christmas just fine." When Marcus asked if I could host Easter, I suggested we rotate hosting duties among all the adult children. "I'll take Easter next year," I offered. "This year I'm visiting a friend in Portland." The friend in Portland was Dr. Martinez's suggestion. A college roommate I'd lost touch with years ago because I'd been too busy managing my family's social calendar. Reconnecting with her led to other reconnections, other friendships I'd neglected in service of family obligations. By the following Christmas, the family had adapted. Jennifer hosted Christmas Eve at her house, with everyone bringing assigned dishes. Marcus took Christmas Day with catered food split among the siblings. I brought dessert and went home after dinner to watch movies with friends. It wasn't the picture-perfect family Christmas I'd spent 15 years orchestrating. But it was sustainable, equitable, and for the first time in years actually enjoyable. The real revelation came during New Year's Eve. I was at a party with my friend Rebecca, the one I'd reconnected with in Portland. At midnight, surrounded by people who knew me as something other than the family workhorse, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd celebrated New Year's Eve anywhere except in my kitchen, cleaning up after a family party I'd planned and hosted and orchestrated from start to finish. "What are you thinking about?" Rebecca asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "I spent 15 years trying to make my family happy," I told her. "And I never once asked if it was making me happy." She clinked her champagne glass against mine. "Well, better late than never." Looking back now, I understand that my Christmas morning flight to Hawaii wasn't really about revenge or dramatic gestures. It was about boundary setting, teaching my family that I was a person with my own needs and desires, not just a resource they could exploit indefinitely. Dr. Martinez calls it differentiation. The process of becoming an individual within your family system instead of just playing the role they've assigned you. It's uncomfortable and guilt-inducing and sometimes lonely. But it's also the only way to build relationships based on mutual respect instead of exploitation. My family still calls me when they need something, but now they ask instead of assuming. They offer to help instead of expecting me to handle everything alone. They acknowledge my contributions instead of taking them for granted. And when they don't, When someone slips back into the old patterns of expectation and entitlement. I have a tropical drink by a pool in Maui to remind me that I have choices. That I can say no. That their discomfort with my boundaries is not my emergency to solve. The best part is that they've all become more capable. Jennifer has discovered she's actually quite creative when she has to be. Marcus has learned to coordinate family schedules. Mom has started asking what would work best for everyone instead of just assigning tasks to whoever seems most available. They didn't need me to handle everything for them. They needed me to stop handling everything for them so they could learn to handle things themselves. Sometimes I think about that morning in the airplane, watching California disappear below me while my family gathered around an empty table. I'd spent so many years afraid of disappointing them, afraid of letting them down, afraid of what would happen if I wasn't there to manage their expectations. It turns out what happened was simple. They figured it out. They adapted. They grew up. And so did I. The notification from Capital One arrived at 2:47 a.m. during my junior year at Northwestern. Account alert. Your card ending in 4789 has exceeded its limit. I stared at my phone screen in the darkness of my dorm room, already knowing what I'd find when I logged into my account. $8,000 credit limit. $8,247 balance. I pulled up my other accounts. Chase, maxed. Bank of America, maxed. Discover, maxed. American Express. Emergency authorization for $2,000 over limit. Total damage. $40,247 across 5 credit cards I'd worked 2 jobs to qualify for. All with perfect payment histories I'd maintained since turning 18. My parents had every card number, expiration date and security code. I'd given them emergency access when I started college, thinking they might need to help with textbooks or medical emergencies. That was 2 years and $40,000 ago. I screenshot everything methodically just like I'd been doing for the past 18 months. Every unauthorized charge, every maxed out notification, every overlimit fee. I'd learned to document everything after the first time I'd tried to confront them about smaller charges and they'd gaslit me into believing I'd forgotten making purchases. You probably bought something online and forgot, Mom had said when I'd questioned a $500 charge at a furniture store 3 states away. You know how scattered you get during finals. But I wasn't scattered. I was a forensic accounting major with a 3.9 GPA who tracked every penny I spent in detailed spreadsheets. I knew exactly what I'd purchased and what I hadn't. The phone rang at 6 a.m. Mom's contact photo filled my screen. The happy family portrait from last Christmas where we all looked like we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Honey, we need to talk, she said without preamble. About what? Your credit cards are having some issues. Dad thinks there might have been identity theft. I sat up in my narrow dorm bed, already reaching for my laptop to start recording. Illinois was a one-party consent state. I'd looked that up months ago. What kind of issues? Well, they're all maxed out. We used them for some family emergencies, but we're having trouble making the payments right now. Dad's been between jobs and you know how tight things have been. Family emergencies. I scrolled through my screenshots while she talked. There were charges at luxury restaurants, high-end electronics stores, a weekend trip to Vegas, and what appeared to be a down payment on a new car. We needed the money more than you, she continued, her voice taking on that familiar tone that meant she was building up to a guilt trip. You're young and in college. You don't have real expenses like we do. How much did you spend? It's not about the amount, sweetie. It's about family helping family. You'll understand when you're older and have real responsibilities. I pulled up my credit monitoring app. My score had dropped 180 points. I'd gone from excellent credit to barely qualifying for a secured card, all because of charges I'd never made for things I'd never received. The payment plans are very reasonable, Dad's voice joined the conversation. He'd apparently been listening on speaker. You'll thank us later when you see how this helped the family through a difficult time. What kind of payment plans? Well, the minimum payments are only about $1,200 a month total across all the cards. Very manageable for someone with your opportunities. $1,200 a month. I made $800 a month working 20 hours a week at the campus library while maintaining a full course load. After tuition, rent, and basic expenses, I had maybe $50 left over each month. Where am I supposed to get $1,200 a month? You could get a better job, Mom suggested. Or take out student loans. That's what they're for, Helping students with expenses. These weren't my expenses. The silence stretched for exactly 15 seconds. I counted. They were family expenses, Dad said finally. And family helps family. End of discussion. I calmly said, I understand. But what I understood was different from what they thought I understood. I understood that my parents had committed credit card fraud. I understood that they had no intention of paying the money back. I understood that they expected me to destroy my financial future to cover for their crimes. And I understood that I had enough evidence to bury them. After I hung up, I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Academic Research Project. Inside were 18 months of screenshots, recorded phone calls, and detailed documentation of every unauthorized transaction. Every charge had been cross-referenced with my location at the time, usually 300 miles away on campus, and supported by dining hall records, library logs, and dorm key card swipes that proved I couldn't have made the purchases. I'd been building this case since the first $500 furniture store charge, adding to it every time they used my cards, every time they lied about it, every time they tried to gaslight me into believing I was somehow responsible for their spending. My criminal justice professor had helped me understand the legal framework, though he thought it was theoretical research for a class project. Federal credit card fraud. Identity theft. Wire fraud for the transactions that crossed state lines. Each charge carried potential prison time. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd had saved for 6 months. Morrison and Associates. The receptionist answered. How can I help you? This is Sarah Chin. I need to speak with Attorney Morrison about a criminal referral. James Morrison had been my forensic accounting professor's law school roommate. He specialized in white-collar crime and had agreed to review my theoretical case study the previous semester. He'd been very interested in the thoroughness of my documentation. Sarah, I've been wondering when you'd call. Is this about that family financial fraud case we discussed? It's not theoretical anymore. They maxed out 5 of my credit cards last night. $40,000 total. Do you have the documentation we discussed? Everything. 18 months worth. Screenshots, location data, witness statements, recorded conversations. All legally obtained. Can you be in my office at 2 p.m.? I'll be there. And Sarah, bring everything. If this is as solid as you described in your class project, we're looking at multiple federal charges. I spent the rest of the morning organizing my evidence into a professional presentation. Screenshots were sorted chronologically. Bank statements were highlighted to show impossible spending patterns. GPS data from my phone proved my location during every fraudulent transaction. The most damaging evidence was the recorded phone calls. 6 months of conversations where my parents admitted to using my credit cards, discussed which cards had available credit, and planned purchases they intended to make with my accounts. We can use Sarah's Chase card for the trip, Mom's voice said in one recording from March. She never checks that one carefully. What if she notices? Dad asked. We'll tell her it was a family emergency. She's always been too soft to push back. Too soft to push back. That's what they'd always believed about me. The quiet daughter who never caused trouble, who always tried to keep peace in the family, who absorbed their financial problems without complaint. They had no idea that quiet didn't mean weak. They had no idea that I'd been systematically documenting their crimes for a year and a half. They had no idea that their soft daughter was about to destroy their lives. Attorney Morrison's office was downtown, on the 15th floor of a glass building that screamed expensive legal representation. I'd worn my best interview suit and carried a leather portfolio that contained enough evidence to send my parents to federal prison. Sarah, he stood as his secretary showed me in. I've been looking forward to this conversation. For the next 2 hours we went through everything. Every transaction, every recorded conversation, every piece of supporting documentation. Morrison's expression grew more serious as we progressed through the timeline. This is extraordinary, he said finally. I've prosecuted white-collar crime for 15 years, and I've rarely seen evidence this comprehensive from a victim. You've essentially built the government's case for them. What happens now? Now we decide how you want to proceed. You could file a civil lawsuit to recover the money, but given your parents' financial situation, that might be throwing good money after bad. The criminal route is more likely to get results. What would criminal charges mean? Federal credit card fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. Each card they used fraudulently is a separate count. We're looking at potentially 25 federal felony charges. The sentencing guidelines would likely result in 3 to 5 years in federal prison for each parent. I thought about the last 2 years. The stress of watching my credit score plummet while trying to maintain my grades. The part-time jobs I'd worked to try to stay afloat while my parents spent money I didn't have. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the complete disregard for my financial future. They destroyed my credit to pay for vacations and luxury items. They expected me to take out student loans to cover their spending. They called me soft and selfish when I tried to question them. The evidence supports charges that carry serious prison time, Morrison confirmed. But I need to be clear. Once we involve federal prosecutors, this becomes criminal. Your parents will be arrested, charged, and prosecuted. There's no going back from that. Will I get my money back? Restitution is part of the sentencing process in federal cases. They'll be required to pay back every penny, plus interest and penalties. The court will garnish wages, seize assets, whatever it takes. I looked out the window at the city below, thinking about the phone call that morning. You'll thank us later, Dad had said. Family helps family, Mom had insisted. I want to proceed with criminal charges. Morrison nodded. I'll prepare the complaint and evidence package for the U.S. Attorney's Office. Given the strength of your documentation, I expect they'll move quickly. How quickly? Search warrants within a week. Arrests within 2 weeks. Your parents won't see this coming. That evening I called my parents to check in just like I had every Sunday for the past 3 years. Normal conversation about classes, weather, family gossip. They mentioned being stressed about money, but confident they'd figure something out. You've always been such a good daughter, Mom said. Never giving us trouble, always understanding when family needs come first. Family is important, I agreed. Exactly. Some children would make a big fuss about the credit card situation, but you understand that we're all in this together. I do understand. 3 days later, Morrison called with an update. The U.S. Attorney's Office has accepted the case. They're calling it one of the most well-documented family fraud cases they've seen. Search warrants have been approved for your parents' home, vehicles, and financial accounts. When? Tomorrow morning. They'll execute the warrants simultaneously and make arrests if your parents are present. Do you want me to be there when they call you? Why would they call me? You're the victim and star witness. They'll need an official statement, and your parents will probably try to contact you after they're arrested. I thought about that for a moment. Can I block their calls? You can, but I'd recommend taking at least one. Let them make statements about the charges. Anything they say to you can be used as evidence. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on Thursday. Dad's number but Mom's voice. Sarah, honey, there's been a terrible mistake. The FBI came to our house with a warrant. They're saying we stole from you, but you know that's not true. We're family. In the background, I could hear Dad talking to someone, his voice strained and higher than usual. They arrested Dad, Mom continued. They took our computers, our phones, all our financial records. They're saying 25 federal charges. This has to be a mistake. What kind of charges? Credit card fraud. Wire fraud. Identity theft. But we're family. You gave us permission to use those cards. When did I give you permission? Silence. Then, well, you gave us the numbers for emergencies. I gave you the numbers for emergencies. Vacations and electronics and furniture aren't emergencies. Sarah, you have to call them and tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them we're family and we work these things out together. I looked at my laptop screen where I had 18 months of evidence organized in neat folders. Screenshots of $300 dinners at steakhouses while I ate ramen noodles. Charges for luxury hotels while I worked extra shifts to pay rent. A $2,000 purchase at Best Buy on the same day they'd lectured me about being more responsible with money. I can't do that, Mom. What do you mean you can't? You're our daughter. I mean, I can't lie to federal investigators. The charges aren't a misunderstanding. I have records of everything. The silence stretched longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Harder. You did this. You called the police on your own family. You stole $40,000 from me and destroyed my credit. You committed federal crimes and expected me to cover for you. We raised you. We fed you and clothed you and put a roof over your head for 18 years. And then you stole from me for 2 years. We're even. I hung up and immediately called Morrison. How did it go? He asked. She confessed to using the cards and tried to get me to lie to investigators. All recorded. Perfect. The prosecutors will love that. How are you holding up? I thought about the question. How was I holding up? I was 20 years old, sitting in a dorm room having just helped send my parents to federal prison. I should probably feel terrible. Said I felt relieved. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't worried about unauthorized charges appearing on my credit cards. I wasn't dreading phone calls about money I didn't have. I wasn't carrying the weight of their financial irresponsibility on my shoulders. I'm okay, I said and realized I meant it. Good. The next few months will be difficult as the case proceeds, but you've done the right thing. No one should have to choose between family and financial survival. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following month. Both parents were released on bond with conditions that included no contact with me and no access to any financial accounts that weren't pre-approved by their probation officers. They tried calling from different numbers, sending letters through other relatives, even showing up at my dorm building. Each contact was documented and reported to their probation officers, adding violations to their growing legal problems. My aunt called 2 weeks after the arrests. Sarah, honey, your parents made mistakes, but prison? Their family. Surely you can work something out. They committed federal crimes. There's nothing to work out. But they're your parents. They love you. People who love me don't steal from me and destroy my credit. Money isn't everything. Family is forever. Money isn't everything, but it's something. And they took all of it. The trial proceeded quickly. Federal prosecutors had 18 months of evidence, recorded confessions and financial records that showed a clear pattern of fraud. My parents' public defender recommended plea deals. Both parents pled guilty to multiple counts of credit card fraud and identity theft. Dad received 4 years in federal prison plus 5 years of supervised probation. Mom received 3.5 years plus probation. Both were ordered to pay full restitution of $47,000. The original $40,000 plus interest and penalties. The judge's comments during sentencing stayed with me. The defendants violated not just federal law, but the fundamental trust between parents and children. They used their position as parents to gain access to their daughter's financial information, then systematically exploited that access for personal gain. The damage to the victim extends beyond money to include psychological harm and damaged credit that will affect her for years to come. Restitution payments started immediately, garnished from both parents' prison jobs at 25 cents per hour. At that rate, they'd be paying me back for approximately 47 years. 6 months after sentencing, I received a letter from Mom. The envelope was marked with the federal prison's return address. Dear Sarah, it began. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened. I want you to know that I'm sorry for the pain we caused you, but I still believe families should stick together through difficult times. I hope someday you'll forgive us and we can rebuild our relationship. I filed the letter in my evidence folder just in case. Then I checked my credit report, slowly improving thanks to the court-ordered restitution and my continued good payment habits. My credit score had recovered to 720. I'd been approved for a new apartment with no cosigner required. I'd received 3 job offers for after graduation, all with starting salaries that would let me build a real financial foundation. For the first time in my adult life, I was in complete control of my own finances. No unauthorized charges, no surprise bills, no family emergencies that weren't actually emergencies. I thought about Mom's letter about forgiveness and rebuilding relationships. Maybe someday I'd be ready for that conversation. But today I had final exams to study for and a future to build. A future funded entirely by my own work, protected by my own careful documentation, and secured by my own willingness to stand up for myself when standing up mattered most. The girl who'd been too soft to push back, had learned to push back just fine. She'd learned to document everything, trust but verify, and never again mistake quiet for weak. Some lessons cost $40,000 and 2 parents' freedom to learn. But some lessons are worth the price.